Welcome to the Kenya Wantamnoto Movement, or KWM podcast.
Great to be diving deep today.
Absolutely. We're getting into a really powerful historical reckoning today. It's the story of the men and women who, truly built Kenya.
The ones who sacrificed.
Exactly, only to be betrayed and, forgotten by the powerful after independence. We're looking at sources that really challenge that official narrative.
Yeah, research, testimony, documented facts. It paints a stark picture of the high cost of integrity back then.
And what's really striking, isn't it, is that the sources don't just treat this as history, like some dusty record.
Not at all. It's presented as a living blueprint, a blueprint for the systemic issues of accountability, or lack thereof, that still persist today.
It really forces you to ask that critical question. What happens when a nation builds monuments for presidents, often the very ones who consolidated wealth?
Right, while ignoring its true patriots, the moral architects, you could say.
Absolutely. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack that specific story, the one the state works so hard to bury.
We need to identify these heroes, understand the actual mechanisms used to silence them.
Yes, and then connect that pattern directly to today, to the growing need for citizen-led accountability that the KWM represents.
And that name itself, Wantam Notum, it's powerful.
It is.
It really speaks to that clear choice. We want accountability, we want truth, ethical leadership.
Not the lies, not the corruption, not the theft.
Exactly. It's a fundamental refusal to accept the status quo. So, okay, let's get into the roots of this refusal. Who are these heroes? And crucially, why were their stories silenced so brutally?
Okay, section 1. The stolen narrative. Independence betrayed. When you look at the official history of Kenya, the version in textbooks, state celebrations, it's often portrayed as this smooth transition, right? A colonial rule to self-governance.
Almost seamless, the way it's sometimes told.
But the sources we're diving into, they lay out a much more painful central conflict, an immediate jarring difference between the rhetoric of liberation
And the reality of the sacrifices made by real patriots.
Exactly.
The sources detail what they term the core betrayal. And it started almost immediately, didn't it? Pretty much the day the flag went up in 1963.
That's right. Kenya's story is filled with people who paid for justice, paid with their freedom, their blood, sometimes their lives.
But their names, actively twisted, rewritten, or just erased from public view. It wasn't accidental.
And you see it physically, don't you? The distortion is right there in the capital. Streets, major roads, named after the powerful, the ones who got rich.
Not the brave, not the ones who actually fought for it.
It goes beyond just symbolism, though. The sources suggest this erasure was, integral to building the new power structure itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Monuments go up for presidents who consolidated power, grew rich off broken land promises.
While the people who faced bullets, torture cells, demanding equality, they get ignored. Did the sources detail the specific ways this betrayal became institutionalized?
Yes, they did. And that's where the analysis gets really sharp. The state essentially weaponized the institutions meant to serve the public. Well, post-1963, you see specific land acts being passed. Acts that bypass the intended resettlement of ordinary people, the peasants, the fighters.
And instead,
Vast tracts of that former colonial land went straight to the ruling elite, to their loyalists. This immediately created a new, wealthy class.
whose interests were completely opposed to the ideals of, say, the Mau Mau fighters or the socialist thinkers.
Diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
So the wealth inequality wasn't just some unfortunate outcome. It was structural, built into the system from the start.
And I imagine anyone who pointed this out became an immediate threat, an existential threat, really.
Precisely. Which brings us to the why. Why silence the real heroes? The sources are clear. The state feared exposure more than anything.
Because truth threatens profit.
Exactly. The new ruling class was terrified. Terrified that the revolutionary ideals they had ridden to power on integrity, fair distribution, would expose their instant wealth accumulation.
Courage embarrasses those in power, especially when they haven't lived up to the dream.
And the leaders learned quickly. Control history by writing it yourself. Control the narrative through the civil service, through the media, which was still nascent.
So, the moment someone questioned where the wealth was going, how it was being distributed?
They were eliminated, metaphorically or tragically, literally.
Yeah.
Anyone speaking for economic equality, land reform, questioning corruption.
They were branded. Radicals, communists, tribal agitators, anything to delegitimize their moral standing.
Precisely. And each act of silencing, whether it was harassment, imprisonment, or murder, it served a purpose. It preserved the illusion of order.
And ensured future generations would forget who really built the nation and what they actually fought for.
It becomes this systemic, self-preserving cycle of betrayal.
And the most profound irony, perhaps, is the story of Jomo Kenyatta himself, a cautionary tale.
Absolutely. He started as the symbol of resistance, imprisoned for fighting colonialism, one of the famous Kapenguria Six.
That group Kenyatta, Fred Kubai, Palmgay, Bildad Kajia, Ashingoneko, Kungu Kurumba, they were the faces of the struggle, jailed together in '53. They embodied national hope.
But the sources are stark, aren't they? Describing his transformation after release, after independence.
He became the very oppressor people had just fought against, consolidated immense power, crushed dissent, often violently.
And rewarded his loyalists with the very land people had bled for.
It's the ultimate betrayal of the revolution, isn't it? His face is on the money now, his legacy secured by the state.
Yet, as one source powerfully puts it, the soil beneath his statue holds the bones of those he betrayed.
The struggle started with ideals, but it ended with comfort and titles for a select few. It set Kenya on this course of moral drift that arguably continues.
And to really grasp the depth of this systemic betrayal, we have to look at the individuals, the specific people who paid that ultimate price for integrity.
Right, this wasn't just political disagreement. It was a pattern, a sustained pattern of eliminating anyone posing a moral or ideological threat to the new regime's wealth.
Let's start with Piogama Pinto, the sharp voice, as some sources call him, in early independence.
He wasn't just a politician, was he? He was a revolutionary journalist, a committed socialist, believed deeply that independence without economic equality was meaningless, hollow.
And his actions back that up. He didn't just talk. He actively funded liberation movements across Africa.
Crucially, he published stories the state absolutely hated in his publication, The Pan-Africanist.
Yes, backing political rivals, young leaders who challenged the Kenyatta government's economic policies, the very policies funneling wealth upwards, neo-colonial policies, essentially.
His assassination in 1965, just 2 years after independence, it silenced one of the most effective voices for real justice.
And the speed of it. It shows just how insecure that new ruling class felt right from the beginning.
And the aftermath is chilling. The state immediately buried his legacy under propaganda, called him an extremist.
What really stands out in the source material is that detail about his grave. No major monument bears his name. His grave is quiet, unguarded.
It's a stark symbol of what real challenging patriotism looked like, and how fast the state moves to erase even the physical memory.
Moving forward a decade, you see a very similar pattern with Josiah Mwangi Kariuki, J.M. Kariuki, often called the prophet of inequality.
His platform was really a direct continuation of Pinto's ideals, wasn't it? Focused entirely on economic justice, land reform.
He wasn't just offering sound bites. His entire political life was about challenging the ruling class's land acquisition. He proposed concrete reforms.
Reforms that would break up the huge estates being accumulated by ministers, by party loyalists.
In his famous warning that Kenya risked becoming a nation of 10 million beggars ruled by a few millionaires, that wasn't just rhetoric, it was a policy warning based on what he saw happening.
A vision deemed too dangerous because it directly challenged the structural inequality the regime had built.
Exactly. And when his words started turning into actual mass political mobilization,
the state eliminated him. Arrested at a prominent hotel in Nairobi, then his mutilated body found in Nongong Forest in 1975. Horrific.
And the subsequent parliamentary inquiry, a complete farce, according to the sources, designed to cover up state involvement.
The killers walked free. Parliament went back to business as usual.
The tragedy of Kariuki is that his name now lingers, maybe in chants, maybe in broken promises, but he's absent from the official memorials he truly earned.
The state used his memory, then forgot him.
And then we have to address the ultimate betrayal, perhaps. The heroes of the actual physical liberation struggle itself, Dedan Kimathi and Field Marshal Moriyama, their liberation was left unfinished.
Kimathi, leader of the Mau Mau, hanged by the British in '57.
Yet, for decades after independence, the Kenyan government actively avoided honoring him. They were afraid his name would inspire rebellion against modern oppression, against the ongoing land inequality.
Think about that. A government claiming to be the successor to the independence struggle, afraid of its most famous martyr. Why?
Because Kimathi symbolized the demand for land redistribution, for total self-rule, ideals the new elite had completely abandoned.
It's only recently a statue was built, but the sources emphasize that painful detail. The state never really helped the family find Kimathi's remains, buried in an unmarked grave.
The government celebrates independence every year, yet Kimathi's family still searches for the bones of the man who fought for it. It's heartbreaking.
And Field Marshal Moriyama's story is just as compelling. Fought alongside Kimathi, but famously refused to surrender after independence.
Declared freedom incomplete while land remained concentrated with the wealthy few. So the government treated him like an outcast, not a hero. Sent security forces after him.
His continued defiance, hiding out in the forests of Meru and Nambani, it was a living, constant criticism of that post-colonial compromise.
And when he eventually passed away, his courage was essentially scrubbed from public education. The government feared his message of unfinished liberation.
The only monuments to his struggle, oral stories, passed down by elders in his home areas.
And that reliance on oral tradition, on local memory, that's precisely the kind of crucial, decentralized documentation the KWM aims to formalize and protect.
Shifting focus slightly, we see the pattern repeat with the clergy. During the darker Moy years, men who used the pulpit against state tyranny.
The defiant clergy, Reverend Timothy Njoya and Bishop Alexander Marridge, stand out.
Reverend Njoya was a seismic force, wasn't he? Demanding multi-party democracy, human rights, when doing so could mean detention, pain, or even death.
He survived brutal attacks. Police beat him savagely on the streets. And sadly, many institutional church leaders turned their backs, protecting their own status.
But he never stopped. He's alive today, living proof that moral courage can survive physical brutality.
And yet, the state has never built anything to honor him, not even a simple plaque where his blood stained the pavement during those pro-democracy protests.
It's a deliberate silence, isn't it? A message. Integrity linked to democracy will be ignored, even scorned.
Bishop Marridge's end was more final and deeply shocking. He was relentlessly exposing state corruption in the late 80s.
I remember this part in the sources. Before a trip to Buzia district, he publicly warned officials he might not return alive.
The very next day, he was dead. A highly suspicious car crash involving a government vehicle. It sent chills across the country.
Confirmed that speaking truth offered no protection, no matter your title.
His killers remain unnamed. The government swiftly called it an accident. His followers immediately knew it was a state execution.
And again, no monument for Bishop Marridge. Only sermons replayed in memory. These cases, they illustrate a clear rule, don't they?
Absolutely. Political difference might lead to harassment, but moral integrity, especially when tied to public awakening about corruption or rights, that led directly to elimination.
This history, the calculated betrayal of Pinto, Kariuki, Kimathi, the clergy, it forces us to confront a really chilling reality.
Yeah, that betrayal happened because power was centralized. The truth was easily suppressed, easily rewritten by those operating from Nairobi.
So if we connect this historical pattern to today, it raises that huge question, doesn't it? How do we prevent future betrayals? How do we ensure accountability now in a landscape still dominated by centralized power?
And the sources are quite clear on this. For the truth to survive, for that quantum notum philosophy to actually succeed, history needs to be written by the people, not just the powerful elite.
Which brings us right to what the sources call the misconception of change. Most Kenyans, perhaps understandably, still think change begins in Nairobi. We wait for presidential manifestos, parliamentary bills.
We wait for the central government to fix the road in our village, account for stolen funds in our county.
Wrong.
Exactly. The KWM is fundamentally reframing that. Change begins where you live, and it starts with documentation.
When citizens in Turkana, Imakwini, Kisumu, Nyeri, wherever you are, when you share what's happening on the ground.
The local tender fraud, the broken borehole, the official who vanished after making promises.
Patterns immediately appear. You start seeing the same tricks, the same hands, the same corruption schemes operating across different counties.
And that is how accountability begins. Not with titles, not with decrees from the top. It begins with ordinary people refusing to be fooled twice.
Accountability starts with documentation. We want your stories, what is happening, or, just as importantly, what's not happening that should be.
Who's doing something right in your community? Who keeps promising change and then just vanishes after the election?
Tell it as it is. That's the key. No filters, no spin. Your documented words, your observations, they can wake up the next person in your county to act.
That is how a movement grows. One honest, decentralized post at a time. This collective action is the real monument we owe to those forgotten heroes we've been talking about.
And this platform, oneandnotum.com, it's not just another news site. It's something much more powerful.
It's a people's record. Every comment, every truth written there forms an irrefutable trail. A trail that no spin doctor, no government cover-up can easily erase.
When you post, you're not just reacting, you are actively documenting Kenya as it is right now, building an historical record in real time that reflects the grassroots truth.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? If you want to join this movement, if you want to ensure the sacrifices of people like Pinto and Kariuki were not in vain.
You have to participate. We have to stop letting the history of today be stolen like the history of yesterday was.
So we urge you, visit www.wannanotem.com. Go there, create your account. It's straightforward.
All 47 counties are listed right there, waiting for your input. Find your county, start posting, share your ideas, share what you see, help change your village, your city, your nation.
History isn't written in offices anymore. It's written here, by you.
Okay, let's get back to some of those specific narratives. They really illustrate the high cost of integrity and how political innocence was eroded over time. We need to detail these sacrifices to understand what KWM is up against.
One of the most shocking cases, the one that really shattered national trust for many, was Dr. Robert Uko's death.
Dr. Uko, Foreign Affairs Minister, served with skill, dignity, represented Kenya internationally.
But he made what turned out to be a fatal mistake. He started questioning government corruption, specifically the misuse of foreign aid, complex financial deals involving key people in the inner circle.
And in 1990, abducted and murdered, his body brutally dumped near his home in Koru.
The circumstances were immediately suspicious. The state's response: quick, inadequate inquiries, then basically burying the truth under bureaucracy.
International investigators hinted strongly at involvement by top officials, didn't they? Maybe even cabinet colleagues.
They did, but accountability never followed. Oko's ghost, as the sources suggest, still haunts those corridors of power where silence buys loyalty, buys promotion.
His death really marked the end of innocence for so many Kenyans, especially those who believed you could reform the system from within.
It confirmed that even high-ranking, internationally respected officials weren't safe if they challenged corruption.
The state pretends not to remember, but his home in Koru became a sort of pilgrimage site, didn't it? A tourist stop for people seeking the truth the government wouldn't provide.
Now, contrast that violent end with the slow, deliberate erasure of someone like Bildad Kajia, the honest man.
Kajia, central to the liberation story, one of the Kapenguria Six, jailed with Kenyatta.
Yet his path after independence couldn't have been more different from his former colleagues.
He stood up in Parliament, publicly accused the post-colonial government of betraying the poor. His integrity was absolute.
And for the new elite, utterly inconvenient. He famously refused to enrich himself, lived humbly, died poor, often struggled financially.
He confronted Kenyatta, confronted his ministers directly, argued independence meant nothing if most Kenyans remained hungry and landless while the leaders acquired huge farms.
His honesty was just too embarrassing for the newly rich, so they systematically sidelined him, removed him from power, erased him from textbooks.
Kaji's farm never expanded. The message was crystal clear for any future leaders watching. Kenya does not reward clean hands.
His name barely appears in the National Museum. It's a profound example of historical censorship driven by greed.
And the cost of being associated with liberation, but not aligning with the powerful elite. It affected others from the Kapenguria Six, too.
Kungu Karumba and Fred Kubai, tragically reduced to historical footnotes in many official accounts.
Karumba was essential early on, helped finance the Mau Mau struggle.
Yet, in 1974, he just disappeared. Mysteriously, after a visit to Uganda, his body never found.
Officials called it a mystery. But those close to him suspected political involvement, tied perhaps to business interests that crossed paths with the powerful.
The man who helped bankroll liberation vanished without a trace, without closure. His name survives only in footnotes and in the memories of those old enough to recall the real cost of the flag.
And Fred Kubai, a key labor leader, organized massive strikes against the colonial authorities, also among the Kapenguria Six.
His reward after independence: utter neglect, despite being a figurehead of that anti-colonial struggle.
His decades of sacrifice for workers' rights were completely overshadowed by those grabbing land and titles, using their proximity to power.
The sources note his family really struggled after his death, forgotten by the very government that used his image on propaganda banners claiming liberation.
The tragic irony. Freedom, in the end, stolen by those who likely never spent a difficult day in a detention cell.
And finally, we have to honor Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and Achieng' Oneko, the consistent voices. They never stopped challenging the system inside and out, and they paid a steep personal price.
Jaramogi, Kenya's first vice president. But his principles led him to resign rather than serve a regime he saw as built on corruption.
Remember, he rejected the British offer of leadership before independence, insisted Kenyatta be freed first. That foundational belief in fairness cost him everything after 1964.
He consistently opposed tribalism, stood for radical land redistribution.
And was immediately branded a communist by the Western-aligned Kenyatta government, a convenient label used to justify years of political harassment.
He endured long periods under house arrests, smear campaigns, humiliation, yet never stopped challenging power from the opposition.
When he died, he left a powerful political legacy, yes, of reformists. But the state never honored him with a national monument, truly befitting his courage. He was always viewed as a radical critic.
And Ike Ngoneko, also jailed with Kenyatta. He later broke ranks decisively, criticizing government excesses in the strongest possible terms.
His commitment to justice was stronger than loyalty to any party or individual. He faced repeated political detention, constant intimidation, especially during the Moi years.
When Kingo remains one of the few early leaders who just refused to bow to greed, died with his integrity intact despite the consequences.
Yet his memory gets no celebration day, no museum wing, no national statue. The silence around his name mirrors the original silence he fought against.
A silence imposed first by the colonial master, then by the new local master.
So the sources conclude with this really powerful, urgent message, don't they?
They do. Remembering these heroes, Pinto, Kariuki, Uko, Kajia, all the others, it's not just nostalgia. It's not about looking back fondly.
It is an active form of resistance. Remembering restores balance to a stolen national story. It reminds Kenyans that integrity always existed, even when the system was designed to punish it.
A nation's memory is its mirror. That's a key takeaway. If a country actively builds statues for tyrants and ignores its martyrs,
it confesses its own moral guilt. Kenya's existing monuments, the ones that are prominent, reveal what the ruling class has valued: wealth, titles, political loyalty.
Not moral strength, not justice.
The sources detail what Kenya should have done: build its national memory around moral strength, not political convenience.
Imagine a dedicated civic institute in Nairobi for Pinto, recognizing journalism, socialist thought. Imagine a democracy monument for Njoya and Muja's resilience.
Those kinds of monuments would fundamentally reshape national values over time.
Instead, the reality we see is the state funding lavish celebrations for presidents, while the real patriots fade into forgotten, sometimes unkempt cemeteries.
The source material draws that stark, painful comparison. The budget for just one new government mansion could easily fund dozens of remembrance halls, research centers dedicated to the people who actually gave Kenya its spine.
It's a choice the powerful make every single day through their priorities.
Which brings us back to the unfinished story. Every generation inherits this duty, a duty to name the forgotten.
The state might try to erase through censorship, through neglect.
But the people can restore. The people can rebuild that memory. The fight for independence, the real fight that these heroes waged, it didn't end in 1963.
It continues. Every single time citizens demand justice, demand accountability, and face pushback or silence.
Independence without morality, without the principles Pinto and Kariuki died for.
Mm-hmm.
It's just slavery under a new name, a local name.
Memory isn't built by government decree. It grows only when citizens decide the lies have lasted long enough. We have to stop letting the state dictate who is worthy of national memory.
We have to keep asking, why weren't Pinto's killers punished? Why do Uko's murder files gather dust? Why does J.M. Kariuki's warning about beggars and millionaires still fit Kenya so perfectly half a century later?
The true builders lived without comfort, without wealth, without security. They died for ideas bigger than themselves. Rebuilding that memory means writing their stories back into the streets, the parks, the minds of future generations.
And this movement, the KWM, is essentially that living memory in action. It's the active choice to continue the struggle of those who came before.
So connecting all this history to the bigger picture.
Yeah, the systematic betrayal we've discussed, that's the foundational why behind the KWM. The only way to permanently stop this erasure of truth and ensure future accountability
is by documenting what's happening now, in real time, decentralized, across all 47 counties.
So what does this all mean at the end of the day?
The final word from our sources is really clear. A country that forgets its heroes forgets itself. We simply cannot keep praising the corrupt while pretending to honor freedom.
The true heroes stood for truth when silence paid much, much better.
To remember them is to choose justice over comfort, courage over conformity, truth over propaganda.
And until Kenya truly builds monuments for Pinto, Kariuki, Kimathi, Njoya, Mijoya, Uko, Moriyama, Kajia. Monuments built on genuine national moral recognition, not political convenience.
It will remain a country haunted by its own stolen history.
This movement is the monument. History isn't written in offices anymore. It's written here by you, in your local community.
So one last time we urge you, visit www.wantamnotam.com. Create your account. It takes just a moment.
Identify your county. Be part of the documentation process. Refuse to let the story of today be stolen, like the story of Pinto, Kariuki, and Uko was yesterday.
Join the Kenya Wantanotam movement. Join KWM.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. It's been quite a journey through this history.
It has. And thank you for listening to the Kenya Wantanotam movement, KWM podcast.